This is my 2001 2.5 V6 Manual X Type, and it's getting to the winter time, and I found that every now and then when I drive away I can hear this whining noise. It lasts for 500 or 600 meters and then it stops. What I'm really concerned about is that the transfer box hasn't got enough fluid in it, and I know that this car has had a transfer box at 65,000 miles. The reason it had a transfer box is that they're supposed to be sealed for life, but they actually run dry and then the pinion wheels strip. Looking at the bills for my car, it was 1,100 quid to replace it, so I'm not going down that route. Now, the transfer box is behind the engine, so I've jacked the car up from the front and I've got it on a 2-ton jack with a support behind it so that I can actually get in and undo the level plug. Coming in from the side of the car, the near side that is, looking underneath, you can see the exhaust shielding there, and this is the prop shaft where it meets the transfer box. So there's the universal joint, and the transfer box is this unit just behind it, which you can see now. And then on the side of it there's a blanking plug, and beneath that is the level plug. It doesn't have a drain or a fill hole, it says a level plug, and you need to undo that and inject some oil into it so that it's up to the correct level. Now that is actually the same size as a 3/8 inch drive socket, so you can with a short extension connect to that and undo it. It's actually really difficult to undo, so what I've done is I've managed to connect up the ratchet and then come to the front of the car and push it and undo it. So that is now loose, and I'm going to further undo. This is the ratchet that I'm using. It's the type that you get in a kit for spark plugs with different sizes, but as you can see it's pretty standard. It does have the advantage of having a tilting head. Well, I wasn't really expecting that. Loads of black oil's coming out of it. That really does worry me, because if it's full of oil, which we can see streaming out there, what is it that's actually making the noise? And also, how am I going to get that oil back in? It does make you wonder if it's overfilled as well, because it's not supposed to pour out like this. I've raised up the side, that's the filling side. So yeah, I'm not really sure what to make of this. Maybe there's too much in it. Well, the oil's still coming out, and I can smell it. It's very burnt. I'm not really understanding why it's coming out. This is supposed to be a drain level plug. You shouldn't be pouring out of it. In fact, what you're supposed to do is tip the car the other way to get the oil out. This is the drain plug, and as you can see, it's magnetic. Fortunately, there are no dirty metal particles on it, so I think we're all right there. Well, I've let the car down and I'm jacking the other side up now to get as much oil out as I can. You're supposed to jack it up to 22 inches high. Well, the oil's still dripping out, but what concerns me is it is very thin. I was expecting some really kind of thick, viscous, bevel drive type of oil, the type you put in your differential, or not something that looks like motor oil. It should be interesting when I actually buy the correct product to see what that's like. I've decanted the oil into a measuring cylinder, and my reading tells me that there should only be 600 millilitres, and in fact there's more than 700. I don't know if that's something to be worried about. What does concern me is how thin this stuff is. The recommended gear oil for the transfer box is 75W140, and while you can buy this from Halfords, you can only get it online. They don't keep it in their shops, and I need to get the car back on the road today, so I've selected this gear oil, which is a EP 80W/90 GL5. I've gone on the internet and found out what these things actually mean. Obviously it's for a gearbox, obviously you can put it in a differential. EP stands for extreme pressure, 80W stands for the winter viscosity, so what it's like when it's cold, and the 90 stands for the viscosity at 100 degrees C, which is considerably less than 140, but how often is this car going to get up to 100 degrees C? The GL5 is a rating given by the American Petroleum Institute. GL means lubricant and 5 means the top of the range. It goes from 1 to 5. Apparently there used to be a 6 which is obsolete, and it describes the content of the sulphur and phosphorus in the oil, which makes it actually stick to the bearing surfaces of the gears. Well, so far I've jacked the car up 9 inches, measuring from the sill, and I'm supposed to go up to 22 inches. I'm not sure how I can do this. I'm going to jack the back up now because I don't want to twist the chassis. Do the front, then the back, then the front, then the back, and see how that goes. It's just started to rain, that's all I need. That's the car jacked at both ends. I know it actually looks really high. It is only actually about 9 inches higher than I started out. So I've got quite a way to go to get it to the angle that's required. Funnily enough, the back's higher than the front, but that's the natural California rake that these V6 Interceptors have. To get the car up beyond the reach of the jack, I've put a couple of hardwood blocks that I use as wheel chocks onto the jack so I can get it up maybe another 8 inches. This seems to be working. Well, that's the car jacked up to the top of my axle stands, and the distance from the sill to the ground is 22 inches. So you can very clearly see the unit now, and I just need to take the drain plug out, which is only finger tight, which is just there. So that just undoes with my fingers. I put it back in to make sure it wouldn't drip oil all over the drive. And hopefully I can now inject oil back into there and fill it up. I've got a garden hose which actually fits exactly into the plug hole. I've put a clean drip tray down here in case it ends up going all over the ground, and then the hose I'm going to run up and then connect to this funnel and just use the weight of the oil to drive it in there very slowly. Just read a very reassuring article from Bristol Transmissions saying that 140 oil isn't good enough for a transmission like this, and 90 is ideal. Apparently a 140 it's far too thin, and this looks very thin to me. It wasn't what I was expecting. This is more like brake fluid. Over 700 came out of it, so I'm going to measure out 800 because there'll be some stuck in the pipe, and see if I can get that in there. It's rather lovely colour, looks like a very decent lager, doesn't it? I've put in 700 ml, and it's just starting to drip a little bit there, so I'm wondering if that's full. I'm just going to stick in another 100, quickly put the magnetic plug back in. So it's just going down under its own weight. There's a little bit of air in the pipe because I've had to have a break in it. Well, I used the ratchet to quickly do up the magnetic plug, get it back in nice and tight. It had some red sealant on it already, so it sealed itself, and that's the amount of oil that's dripped out, which is almost nothing. Just draining out the tube to see how much is in it. Very little. There's 200 left in the original plastic container, and that's 100 that's dripped back out of the casing and out of the pipe. So I've put in 700 worth, that's millilitres, cc's in the old days, of clean oil, there was still some oil in there, so I'm sure that's more than enough. I'll have to give the car a run and see what it sounds like. Using the blocks and the bricks, I've raised the car to 24, almost 25 inches above the ground, and it seemed to me that that was exactly the right height because the oil started coming out at about 700, so that seems spot on. So oil changed at 114,471. This car had a new transfer box at 65,000 miles at a cost of 1,100 quid. So I'm hoping that this will now see me to the end of this car. Let's give it a run. I've put the iPod on the floor so it's as near as the transfer box as it can be. So we'll see what it sounds like. No whining noise, that's a good sign. Rolling along at 60 miles an hour in 5th gear, and it's sounding very smooth. So this is 30 miles an hour in 5th gear, just crawling along the main road. It's sounding good. Might be my imagination, but I think it is quieter than it was before. Lovely and smooth, just roll into 5th gear. Sounds great, doesn't it?